Hey everybody, and welcome back to Space Plan. Yeah, that 90 minutes did a lot, turns out. Turns out we can build a lot of stuff when we have just, 9 million stuff casually sitting around. Alright, ooh. These are pretty good. They're things that we want. I mean, look at that. We're at 640. So now we're at like 1 million a second, which is pretty darn good if you ask me. I mean, that's what idling in an idle game tends to get you. Constant interaction has its benefits, but it doesn't replace just the ability to basically disconnect from the game and walk away. Because that's, a pretty nice thing to be able to do, turns out. So actually, let's go ahead and compare what we're going to get out of these. So doubling the spud gun power would give us 4 times 8,000. Because this just doubles from 8 to 16. Which is 32,000. Whereas we could buy one of these for 42. So it's not even worth buying solar spuds just right now. Buying this, that'd be times 2. Yeah, that'd be pretty worth it. But the thing is, we're actually going to get to these numbers pretty darn fast. And also, the solar mass is increasing pretty good. It looks like that solar mass did also increase with the time spent away. I did expect that to happen. It makes sense for it to happen. But you never know. You never really know what's going to happen. So, we're just going to keep on racking up the money. Move my monitor here. The arm for my microphone is getting in the way of my monitor. Trying to move the mic away from my mouse so you guys don't have to hear the incessant clicking, just like slightly incessant, because we do have a good bit to go. Because if we're doing 2 1/3, that's basically 1.5 million a second, which ain't half bad, but it means that we have, of course, to wait a decent bit. It's a little bit less than 300 seconds, so 5 minutes. Is that right? I suppose that seems about right to get to the plated launchers. But we are seeing that solar mass go up a decent bit. But yeah, the second we get that plated launcher, we're gonna go... Well, we're gonna gain another 4 times 42. So another 160. That'll be pretty good. We're already at 200, so... we can go ahead and check out the system. See how fast we are going. Remember, the plot, the goal that we are trying to reach is to increase the mass around the sun, or increase the mass of the sun while orbiting around it, so that we can collapse it into a black hole and orbit said black hole so close and going so fast that we basically invoke relativity. Because, and if you are not familiar with relativity, this is going to sound absolutely stupid. But it is something that has been shown to be true, and that is the faster you are going, or the closer to the speed of light that you are going, the slower time appears to pass to you when compared to people who are not moving as fast. It is something that does not make sense unless you... Well, if you're Einstein, if you really think about it, and then it makes sense. Honestly, it's a hard thing to explain. But the way that it was explained to me that made it make sense is that light always travels the same speed. It is a constant, c. Oh god. 3.8 times... Is it 10 to the 6th, or am I an idiot? Here, we can... I really should know the speed of light. Yeah, 300 million meters per second. That's not really what I was looking for. I mean, it's pretty accurate, but... 6.8 times 10 to the 8th miles per hour, whatever. I really should know that constant off the top of my head, but I don't. Anyway, Regardless, that is a constant. Always. It does not matter what you are doing, light always goes that fast. But that's not entirely true. Light always appears to go that fast, is more accurate. Okay, this is gonna be a nice... Ooh, look at that. Light, oh my gosh, more? Double each potato projectile's total mass. So yeah, that'll be useful in a little bit. But yeah, that's what's actually true. Light always appears to be going that fast. And the reason why we say that is because we're on a planet that is, well, we're not traveling at the speed of light yet, but we're gonna get close. Or at least we're gonna get within a reasonable distance. I'm pretty sure. Just based on how this is. And let's see. If this were a ship or a car that we were in, and we turned on the headlights, what would happen? Because if we're traveling at the speed of light, or almost, to us in the car, that light is not going to travel very quickly. Let's say we're going half the speed of light, just because that gives us some basic math, right? We're traveling half the speed of light, 1/2 c. And we turn on the headlights. Now, we're traveling at c, sorry, at 1/2 c, and light's traveling at c. So that means to us, because we're basically racing with the light, we should see it going slower, right? That's what you would kind of expect. Just like if you were to, you know, be driving in a car down the highway, and you were to, you know, have another car next to you going twice as fast as you. If you were going, you know, 100 miles an hour, and they're going 200 miles an hour, they would gain on you by 100 miles an hour, right? They would appear to be going 100 miles an hour to you. That's how that would work. But light's a little bit weirder than that, because that's what you would expect would happen. Is if you're traveling at 1/2 c and you turn on your headlights, the light appears to be traveling away from you at 1/2 c, because you're traveling half its speed. And or we could even say if you're going 0.99 c, it would appear as though it were going 0.01 c faster than you. But that's not how light works. Light will always appear to be going c. Your frame of reference is altered. So to you in the car that's traveling at almost the speed of light, or half the speed of light, whichever version you would like to go for here, that has to be true. It has to appear that it's traveling at c. So how can that be true then if light is traveling? The thing is, the light travels at the same speed, but to you it will appear to be going at full speed because you are experiencing time at a different rate than everything else because you are going so fast. And this is where it gets wonky as shit. So if you are traveling at 1/2 c, let's keep 1/2 c, I like that example better, there's less decimal points. 1/2 c, c over 2, whichever. If you are traveling that fast and you turn on the headlights, in order for that light to appear as though it is traveling at c, because c is something, it's meters per second, right? So if it's 300,000, you know, 3 to the 8, 3e8 meters per second. If you're going 1.5 e8 meters per second, it's going 1.5 but it has to appear that it's going 3, so you are experiencing time twice as fast. Because the light basically has to cover twice the distance for it to appear to you that it's going like that. And I could be explaining this slightly wrong. I will admit this. I very well could be explaining it wrong, but that is how I understand it. So if you're traveling half the speed of light, you are experiencing time at twice the speed as everybody else. Now what that actually means, from your perspective, everybody else will go faster. And the way that they've tested this is they've taken, and it is true for even like people orbiting the Earth, because you have to travel pretty fast to orbit the Earth. You're still pretty much negligible in terms of the speed of light. It's still a very small percentage, but they have taken 2 synchronized stopwatches, kept one on Earth, and put one in the thing orbiting or basically traveling in space going really fast. And when they come back down, they're not in sync. And we're talking like clocks that are very accurate. Because you could expect two stopwatches to maybe desync a little bit, just naturally. But that's the point. I'm just buying things. But that's the point, though, is that just slight increase in speed, which is not insignificant, but that increase in speed from being on the planet versus orbiting above it is enough to create relativistic changes in time. So what that means is a lot of the times you see like, oh, if you're traveling faster than light, and the premise of this too is if you're traveling at the speed of light or very close to it, because technically based on the laws of the universe you cannot travel faster than the speed of light. It is the theoretical, and I mean it's not even practical for us to get there, but it's a theoretical maximum speed you can go. If you're doing that, you appear to age slower to everybody else, because everything else appears faster to you, but in their normal, quote-unquote normal speed and timeline, you appear to be moving very slowly. Which is pretty interesting. You appear to be moving very slowly. But it explains why we perceive the speed of light as always being the same. Because it will always be the same. It doesn't matter how fast you are going. If you go so fast that you are approaching the speed of light, light has to effectively move faster, even though it doesn't actually change speed. It does that by changing time, because speed is distance over time. So it changes the amount of time because it cannot change the amount of distance that it travels. It's weird. It's really weird, and it's definitely up there in weirdness for just what it is. It's a difficult concept to wrap your head around. If you like drawing free body diagrams, if you are familiar with physics, that's kind of what I did with the car to make it make more sense to me. Just that that whole speed of light thing. It's not really a free body diagram, but it has similarities, because you're pitting basically two speeds against each other, right? The light coming out of the headlights and the car itself. But yeah, Einstein just like figured this shit out, and we're still proving his equations right, which is the hilarious part. I mean, hilarious in terms of like awesome, because seriously, that's awesome to figure that out and be right so many years later, still not being disproven. And it's something that just your normal average person who hasn't really thought about time and space and the way that changes and the way that would affect things, just, that's a hard thing to wrap your head around. Like, it just takes time. It takes time, it takes messing around with things, it takes really thinking about it. And it does take a little bit of physics know-how, I think, to be confident in your understanding. Like, my physics, you know, I took some physics in college, but I didn't, like, I don't have a degree or a minor or, like, anything special in it. But, you know, some of those classes, you just hit some weird shit. But yeah, so the whole plan here is that we are going to get really close to the sun once it's collapsed into a black hole. And so the speed that we will have to be going to orbit something with an immense gravity well like that, effectively, I mean, we'll be pretty close to C is the theory, or the plot, and that means that time will travel significantly slower. Infinite time is kind of what they're going for. Basically, time's going so fast for us that we reach the giant crush, which is the supposed or hypothesized end of the universe. It stops expanding and then turns in and crushes on itself. And we do that, but we're going so fast that we avoid the crush, and time maybe goes backwards during the crush, and then we come out the other side and we are able to warn Earth about dying. That is my understanding of what we were trying to do right now in the plot of the game, which is a little odd. It's definitely a weird, like, it's a sci-fi plot. We don't know that the giant crush is going to happen. Although it is a hypothesized thing. It's not just like this game bullshitting. That's actually a hypothesized thing. The idea that even though the universe is currently constantly expanding, at some point that expansion, which is powered by presumably dark matter, I think that's right. It's been a while. That expansion will stop, and then the gravity of everything will slowly pull everything back in. So yeah, that's what we're planning on doing here. I don't know if it'll work. I mean, I've played this game before. I know whether or not it works, but that's not really the point. The point is that's what we're going to try and do. The denser spuds will fatten the sun twice as fast. Now, there is this really interesting thing going on here that is, like, hypothetically we couldn't actually add mass to the sun by launching spuds at it, because we did basically the only mass that we can. This is a closed system. Arguably, you could say there are other stars that are shining light at us, but this is a closed system. The potatoes that we're getting are coming from the Earth. When a potato grows, when anything grows, it just takes the resources around it and basically makes it into itself. Like, the whole "you are what you eat" thing, while it's supposed to be like a mantra to help you eat better, it's also very true, because the matter that you eat gets basically reconstructed into what your body needs to make more cells. Because remember, your skin, you regrow a whole new layer of skin, like, constantly. I think it's like a month. It's basically when it totally replaces itself. It's fast. Like, those sort of things. Like, you need... It's not like you can find a cell that's like, this cell is brownie, this cell is celery. Like, it's not how that works. It breaks it down into, like, you know, the actual base molecular components that are then required to construct the cells. So you are, hypothetically, what you eat. But it's just one of those things. Like, when I say that, I mean the potatoes are the Earth. Like, they are taking in the nutrients from the soil and taking it in themselves. The only mass that we can throw at the sun is the potatoes, which are basically the Earth. So we could start hurling chunks of the Earth into the sun, and that would be effectively the same. There is nothing coming in from an outside system that is helping it. You could argue that the sun's from not this solar system are helping, because hypothetically, the light coming from the sun that hits the earth, that photosynthesizes the potatoes, technically is contributing to the earth, but we're just throwing it back into the sun because the sun is just a giant fusion reaction. So all the mass is basically being burnt up to, well, converted to release energy. So this is a closed system. The only mass we can actually add to the sun is from the earth. So we can't actually do this. This is why there's a lot of air quotes coming from me in this game, because quite honestly, that's all you can actually give. I think if we get to the 10th spud gun, we'll get an upgrade. I could be wrong, but I'm hoping. But yeah, that is it's an interesting little thing about how all this is quote-unquote working. I just want even numbers, although our probe potato, there we go. Now we're at even numbers. Oh, look at that planet. That's awesome. So yeah, now we basically have to either wait, well, we have to wait for this to go all the way up, which could take a little while. Though I'm fairly certain that if we step away for our 90 minutes between things, we will find that it is done. So yeah, this has been a pretty interesting talk about physics and how shenanigans work. I guess that's the other example. The other example that gets used is if we were to ever send people to colonize another planet far away, and we were using speeds that approach light to do that, they would get there, you know, a whole bunch of years hence, but be okay. I mean, obviously, if it's long enough, I mean, light years are light years, right? Like, if something's 100 light years away, it would take light 100 years to get there. So clearly, humans wouldn't survive. Or at least a single generation of humans wouldn't survive without some form of cryosleep. But even if that weren't the case, even if it were 50 light years away, they wouldn't necessarily experience it like that. Because remember, light always travels at the same speed, relativistically, hence theory of relativity. So relative to you, light's always traveling faster. When you're traveling at that speed, so you are aging slower compared to the rest of the outside world. So 100 light years to the person sitting on Earth is 100 years of you traveling at the speed of light to get somewhere. But to you, depending on how fast you're traveling, are not going to experience 100 years in that time. Because to you, you're actually going slower. So actually, hypothetically, a human could survive 100 light year travel, depending on how fast they're going, and of course, their life expectancy. But if you're traveling at half the speed of light to get there, then you're really only going to experience 50 years of time in between. Which is just crazy. Like, I don't know, that to me is pretty mind-boggling. Which one of these is better? Yeah, this one's better, for sure. Like, that's a little bit crazy. That's a little bit mind-blowing, in my opinion. But things are pretty far away, and that's the big problem for the human race. Is even if so presuming everything goes well, and by everything goes well I mean space travel and space expansion is successful, terraforming becomes a possibility, right? Like, that's neat, that's awesome, you know, colonies on the moon and Mars and who knows where else, right? Moons of Saturn, you know, some crazy stuff like that. If we go outside of our galaxy, we sort of get this desynchronization of the world. of everything. Because let's say that we do, how far away is closest Earth-like planet? All right, the nearest is 12 light years away. In Proxima Centauri, there is a planet that appears to be Earth-like, 12 light years away. 12 light years away. So, if you want to go there, let's say we have cryosleep. Let's just say we have cryosleep. And let's say we can travel so close to the speed of light that it's effectively the speed of light, just because I'm lazy at math. Or, let's just talk half speed of light, which, by the way, is insane. That is insanely fast. Half the speed of light. 150 million meters per second. That is insanely fast. Like, you basically can't conceive of how fast that's going. Like, light travels that fast. Twice that fast. But light travels in that realm, that order of magnitude of speed. And it's just, everything about light appears instant to us. Because every little bit that it travels is so ridiculously fast that we can't perceive the time in between. Like, we're not even your high frames per second slow-mo camera, just couldn't possibly catch that. It's so fast. At least through air, they've done some experiments where they've seen light traveling in other mediums. And, and I'm sure that there's high-speed cameras that are fast enough to at least catch the difference. But that's not my point. If you're going half the speed of light to that planet, it would take you 12 years to get there. Sorry, it would take you 24 years to get there, and it would appear as though it were 12. To you, personally. So, to get to that planet, you would basically be passing a quarter of a century to everybody on Earth, and in our solar system, to get to there, and you would lose a little bit over a decade. That, I should be buying more things. That's crazy. Like, that's crazy. That is a lot of time investment. And even if we've got cryosleep, as I said, it's a desynchronization issue. Like, that's just a lot of time. Now, the people who are on that planet are 24 years behind everything else that's happened on Earth. And if they want to come back, it takes another 24 years. So that round trip, that lag is 50 years. Now, we experience these levels of lag when we send things to other planets in our solar system, and it's minutes at a time. If you've watched, like, The Martian, they talk about how much round-trip time for messages are. Now, radio signals travel pretty fast, turns out. But that's the whole thing. That's the rub, is that lag time, that round-trip time, which is inconvenient on the scale of our solar system, becomes debilitating in the larger sense. If that group of people is not completely self-sufficient, you can't do it. That's 50. If they realize that they need something, they need to spend 24 years to come back and 24 years to go get it. Or, if presuming that, their radio signals travel fast, 12 years to get back. Presuming we have that range. And then 24 years for us to send supplies or backup or whatever they need. That's insane. That's crazy. That is such a long lead time that the second the human race spreads out beyond our galaxy, things get crazy. So until we invent faster than light travel, FTL, which we don't know exactly how that would behave functionally, until we do some crazy shit like that, you're always going to have this problem. And it's a bad problem to have, Like, it just is. It's a bad problem to have. This is still better, isn't it? It actually might not be at the... Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is still better. But yeah, like, that's a big problem. There are some theories about ways to get around this, at least partially around it, though I'm not entirely sure. The first one being quantum entanglement. Quantum entanglement is this pretty crazy quantum mechanics idea that you can take two things and entangle them so that one thing, what happens to one happens to the other simultaneously regardless of distance. It's a very strange idea. I don't remember how hypothetically possible it is, but I'm pretty sure that in theory it works. If you can the entangling of the objects is the hard part. But the idea would be that if you've got these two objects that are quantum entangled, you can just do that. So the idea would be that you quantum entangled like a radio or a walkie-talkie, so that when somebody talks into one walkie-talkie, it immediately comes out the other side. That would remove the problem of having to deal with that message getting back. And then the idea of faster than light travel would of course get you there faster than light does. Which, as I said, light is the theoretical of course being the very important keyword, as we were talking pretty much entirely theoretical stuff right now. The theoretical max speed of the universe. So theoretically we can't get faster than that. Now there's been some interesting sci-fi tropes. Really, I guess I really shouldn't say tropes. Some sci-fi theories, sci-fi plot devices that get around that. Basically, things that are in science fiction, because they are living in a universe where things are spread out, and people do need that ability to travel faster than light. Of course, some just preclude the fact that we will have conquered the speed of light and just, boom, travel faster. I think Futurama's just like, the ship stays still and we move the rest of the universe. But I believe it is Stargate and a couple others that say that we're basically traveling across, we're entering another dimension in order to get to the other place faster. We're not actually traveling faster than light in the sense of actual speed in our universe, but we are going through a higher dimensional plane to get there faster. And we're going to start talking about dimensions again, because the whole idea of another dimension is folding. So if you are on a line, you have to travel we'll use this line. If you're on a line here and you want to get to here, you have to walk across this line. If you have to walk across that line, you just have to do it. There's nothing else you can do. That is the one dimension that you have. But if you add a second dimension, which is suddenly now our screen, you don't have to travel here. You can travel out here and then over here. And the idea is that through this second dimension, you could fold this line, you could curve this line to bring it closer and travel across here. Now, I can't give you a visual with my mouse cursor on this one, but take a piece of paper. And I mean this. Go ahead, find a piece of paper and draw two dots on it. You now, on this two-dimensional plane, have to get from one dot to another. You can find the straightest distance. It's a line. You can find that straightest distance that you could travel if you were standing on that piece of paper in two dimensions. But if you suddenly, and of course you can do this because we live in 3 dimensions, if you suddenly add the third dimension to that paper, guess what? Now you can fold that paper so that the two dots are closer together, and you can travel through that third dimension to get to that other point. So hypothetically, or ideally, possibly, you could then take that now 3 dimensions that we have, and you can imagine getting to another point in space. So maybe the moon, or this planet over in Alpha Centauri. Was that where it was? No, Proxima Centauri. Now you can sit here and calculate the fastest way to get there. It's probably not exactly a straight line because of orbits and things like that, but you can figure out the path that you need to take. Now imagine there was a 4th spatial dimension that we can't conceive of necessarily. But if you could fold that, could fold our 3-dimensional existence and get those closer to each other, you could then get there much faster than walking that straight line. That is basically the idea of a wormhole, traveling through that alternate dimension to get there. And I shouldn't say alternate dimension, the additional dimension, the extra dimension, the next dimension, something like that is, I suppose, slightly more accurate. But yeah, that is a lot of really hypothetical stuff that I've suddenly gone into because we're waiting, because we are idling. I think that means it is our cue to go ahead and leave the game for some idling, and we're going to go ahead and let it idle for another 90 minutes, at which point we will probably be done. Probably. It's not guaranteed, but I think it's pretty likely. I just want more Sputniks around our planet. But yeah, that was a lot of interesting and sciencey talk. So, believe you me, I understand if we got a little too deep in it. But these are some of the things that I think about when playing these random games. They're definitely, it definitely makes it more interesting to know some of those theories. Because a lot of, and I do say theories because a lot of them aren't necessarily proven beyond the shadow of a doubt. Because the theory of relativity is still being proven, but it only takes one thing. It only takes one time of it not working to prove it wrong. Granted, it hasn't happened yet, and it seems unlikely, but that's all it technically takes to prove a theory wrong. You know, that one time you throw something up and it doesn't come back down because gravity, the theory of gravity, suddenly isn't real, or, you know, like, that's all it technically takes for us to have to rethink the way these things supposedly work. Man, we can really build these. Have I gotten to higher than 2.32? No. Looks like that's the best that we can ever actually do. So yeah, I hope that you have found this discussion to be interesting. And by discussion, I mean me randomly talking about the speed of light and all that crap. Because that is probably the last bit that we've got going right here for us. Because next time I think we're just going to get the end game. And I might just smack it on to the end of this. I haven't decided yet. Mostly because I don't know how long it's going to be. So, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I will see you next time. And in between, go look up some stuff about relativity. Correct me if I'm wrong about any of it, because it would be good to know. But enjoy. I'll see you next time, and until then, keep your gears turning.